guys, welcome to the Upshot. This is a podcast for dads trying to get it right. My name is Kyle. I'm joined by my good friend Shane, and we like to have conversations to help other fathers learn how to become better dads. I want to invite you guys to text the word Upshot to 97000. You'll join our text list to receive more updates and communication about how we are continuing to evolve the Upshot and give you more and more resources here in 2024. And now, here is today's episode.
Yeah.
Morning, Kyle.
Hey, I'm excited for today's episode of The Upshot. We have a special guest. My friend Brandon Rogers has agreed to join us today.
Hi, Brandon.
And
hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Sorry about that bump there.
Yeah. No worries. So I met you last summer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for you, I'm sure it felt random. Your wife and kids showed up at my house for an event, like a camp event that we were hosting. And I think it was one of your first couple of weeks of trying out North Point Church, and came out to this camp. And then I think the next Sunday we saw her and the kids in the kids ministry area. And then I just saw you and just assumed that you would know who, I just introduced myself, and we kind of kicked off a friendship and had y'all over and enjoyed getting to know y'all and whatever. But since then, we've gotten to hang out a little bit, and hearing parts of your story today, Brandon's story, I thought he would be a great addition to the podcast today. And so would love for you to just tell us a little bit about you and your family and your story, and then we'll jump into it, man.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. I wasn't quite random. I think Jenn told me all about her experience there. Camp 75, of course, being awesome, but also meeting Jess and how, warm she was and all that stuff. So she told me the whole story, and so I was excited to meet you guys, and
Nice.
And it was really great to, keep connecting and eventually join the group. So
Did Kyle meet your expectations when you were excited to meet him?
Oh, exceeded for sure.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that mustache, it
It's the
just says it all.
mustache.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's always dropping magic, so it's good, man.
It's good.
Yeah. So my story. Okay. So let me tell you the shortened version. My wife and I moved to Austin about 1.5 years ago, and before that we were in Maui, actually, and before that, and we were in Korea. So
Wow.
yeah. Maui's pretty great, but we actually moved to Maui. When I was in Korea, we actually met there. We got married there, and I was working kind of a corporate job. It was kind of it was a good situation while I was over there, and we felt like God was calling us to pursue this YouTube thing. My wife was just doing YouTube as a hobby, and I was going through a bit of an existential crisis, and we were vacationing in Maui because, yeah, we got married in Hawaii. I don't want to tell that story, sorry. But yeah, we were in Maui, and we felt like God was saying, like, hey, pursue this, like try this YouTube thing out, and Maui, he actually seemed to give us a direct nod to go to Maui. So I quit my job, we packed our stuff, we ended up moving there. Slowly, we actually traveled around a little bit, and then eventually got there, and we tried this hard pivot into this YouTube journey where we were trying to build content, but also make a living out of it. And long story short, it ended up being hell in paradise. So it was 3.5 years of just getting beat up from our own expectations and what we thought life there should be.
I guess I didn't realize y'all were doing that for 3.5 years.
Yeah, time flies, but
yeah.
It was 3.5 years, and it was during the time of the end of it was around the time of the pandemic. So it was, time moved a lot differently around that time. So. So we tried that out for a long time, and then it just got to the point where the pandemic happened, and thankfully God gave us a child, because we'd been trying for 5 years by that point, and it just never happened. So he gave us our first kid at an amazing time, actually, because by the time we gave birth, it was around the time of the pandemic, and we got to just have this year of unadulterated enjoying our first baby experience in paradise, where Maui's awesome, but around that time they really shut down hard, and so it was almost like we had the island to ourselves. And so that was really, really cool. But it just got to the point where, for me, connection drives momentum in whatever I'm doing, and so we felt like we were getting a little claustrophobic there, and it just felt like God was putting it in our hearts to move. And so we were considering a lot of options. Where should we go? I think we were thinking Colorado. We had thought California for a long time. Austin was one of them. And we found out that our brother-in-law was moving here. And so we're like, oh, shoot, it's a sign. Let's go.
Yeah.
And so we packed up our stuff. And by that point, actually, we were pregnant with our second. Praise God. And we decided to have our baby in New York real quick we were there for like 6 months, and then we moved to Austin, and now here we are.
Nice.
Where all the cool kids are, trying to have
Shane.
that rub off on us. Yeah, Shane.
Austin is just like Maui.
Yeah, it's
Paradise.
That's right.
yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. It's lots of similarities for sure.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Well, thanks for joining.
Yeah,
Yeah,
welcome,
yeah,
Brandon.
appreciate it.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.
They're even hearing your short story.
Uh-huh.
I have more questions for you for another time. But
Oh,
stuff I didn't know.
perfect. Yeah.
That's cool. Shane, you want to jump into a share your dad moment?
Sure. Every month,
us
Brandon,
going.
we do this moment where we just talk about a highlight. Either it's a good highlight or a bad highlight or an embarrassing moment, just something that we just reflecting on the past month, a story that just reminds us that we're fathers and we don't always have to get it right, even though we're trying to get it right. Sometimes things just don't work out, or sometimes they do work out. And so this morning, as I was trying to think of a great dad moment, this experience came to mind. So my wife and I, we have 6 kids, 5 boys, 1 girl, and we were going through this journey with one of our sons. It's just been really hard. And as they get older and they become teenagers, you just don't know if you're succeeding as a parent, because it's not black and white. It's just this world of gray and uncertainty, and you're kind of losing a lot of influence, and you're just wondering, are they going to turn out okay? And we had this discouraging month, and so I was sitting at work a little bit thinking about my journey as a father with this one child, and prayerfully considering what does it look like to love and lead him well. And then I got this random text from Caleb, my second oldest son, who's 20. He's at ACU, and it was just the most perfectly timed text talking about just how much he appreciated me as his father. And I mean, the end of it was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect, well received. He's like, thanks for pouring so much into us over the years with breakfast dates and whatnot. I wouldn't be the man I am today without you and your leadership. Love you, Dad. And it was like it was the greatest moment. I'm like, gosh, thank you, God. That was the perfectly timed text. About 5 minutes later, I get a text from Jonah, and Jonah started the text with, "Hey, Dad, Mom asked me to share a way that you've been a great dad." I'm like, dang it. He totally ruined it. I'm like, yeah, that's great. So he went on and shared this like really lengthy, powerful text, but I mean, he just ruined the whole thing. So I'm like, okay. Mom asked both you guys to text me. I get it now.
Just them two?
Just the 2 of them, yeah.
So you didn't get 6 text messages?
No, just Jonah and Caleb. But Jonah just knocked it out of the park. Jonah dropped magic when he said, "Hey, Dad, Mom asked me to text you." So that was my dad moment.
That's awesome.
But I appreciate my wife recognizing that I needed a little bit of encouragement, reached out to our boys to say something nice to me.
That's awesome.
So
That's
that was
really
my
cool.
moment.
Well, I'll share mine, and then Brandon will kick it to you. But we've developed a tradition in our house to go to Rosa's after church on Sundays, and I was sharing a little bit with you guys earlier, but I don't know how it got started. I think it just got started like we were being a little lazy on a Sunday, and Jess and I literally were like, let's go to Rosa's, and we like this place. It's great. There's good tortillas, and
Kyle, for our
the queso's
millions
okay.
of international listeners, what is Rosas?
And so if you've never experienced Rosa's is like quick service Tex-Mex.
Okay.
I would say not quite fast food, but the fastest drive-through. So I guess that makes it, but yeah, I grew up with this like out in Abilene, and then there's one right here really close to our house. And so we head over there after church, and the girls, like the first time, there's all these, it's like really bright and colorful in there. There's little birds and frogs and stuff on the walls, and they love counting them all and whatever. Maggie is obsessed with, like, if she could just eat the chips and queso, that's all she would eat for her lunch, and the lemonade. And so they get they each get lemonades, and they get a taco, a bean and cheese taco, and chips and queso, and they eat. Sometimes they eat, sometimes they don't, but they love it because it's Rose's. So that's been that started as a one-time thing, and now it's like we have to do this every week, or like we have 2 angry kids. And so Jess has gotten to where she no longer eats lunch on Sundays. Like, she waits till she gets home because she's like, just can't do it. And I've experimented with pretty much everything on the menu, and I'm about to join her with that. So this week, though, we had some family in town with us, and so we were like, maybe this is a great pattern disrupt. Like, the family's here, her sister and 2 boys, our nephews, were here. Like, maybe we can disrupt the pattern. We can go somewhere else for lunch today. So we chose to go to another Mexican food place, an actual sit-down place called Dos Salsas, and
which is much nicer than Rosa's.
Well, you would think
it's a nicer restaurant.
I think it's debatable now. Like, we could talk about that.
gosh.
So we go in, we have to wait. Kids are bouncing off the walls. There's been time change, so it's like everyone's kind of weird. And so we finally get seated, and well, the kids, the girls, they're not used to like having to sit and like look at a menu and then wait for their food. Like at Rosa's, it's fast. Like you order, and like by the time they're seated, I'm already bringing the food over. We had to wait for the waitress to come by, and then before they could get their lemonade and all this stuff. And so I've got a 3-year-old next to me who's just like can't stay in her chair. She's running around. She's mad because she doesn't have her taco. When her taco gets here, she doesn't want to eat it. There's a live band singing that's not very good. It's loud. Anyways, the whole thing ended with, well, it felt like it would never end, but Jess actually left mid-meal taking the 3-year-old home because she wasn't going to eat, and I don't know. And I had to box up everyone's meals and take it home. It was just it was a mess. So we'll see what happens this week when we got it. Like, was it enough of a pattern disrupt that we don't have to go back to Rose's this week? I don't know.
Not a chance.
I'll ask you. I mean, ask me again in a week. But if you have recommendations on other places I could start working into the mix, I'll take them.
I just love how like your children's like qualification of good food is the speed at which they get the food. And this is what they're going to take with them into adulthood.
Instant gratification, right? It's horrible. Yeah, we pass by like if we go anywhere close to Rose's, they're shouting, "Rose's!" Like, they see it, they know it. It's like the only restaurant that exists to them.
Do you kind of throw up in your mouth every time you see it?
Something like that. A little sweat. Yeah. Brandon, what you got?
So yesterday, and this is a secondhand story, so we'll see how well I tell it. But my wife was talking to my kid at dinner time. We had all our food out, and we were eating outside because it was so nice yesterday. And apparently, she was saying, "Don't let flies land on your food," because my wife had recently learned that flies, they throw up on the food to digest it. I didn't know this. I thought they like. Did you guys know that?
I've heard things.
Yeah. So I thought they were just like, scooping it into their mouths, but apparently not. They throw up on it so that it like, I guess liquefies maybe and suck it right up.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's how flies do it. I don't really know. Yeah.
I really hope men are eating as they're listening to share this.
Exactly.
Could we link like a video here?
I am utterly disgusted, Brandon. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very
Thank you very
welcome.
much for being here with us today.
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity to share good information, the good news, excuse me. So, my wife being borderline OCD, of course, this is a meaningful story to her, and she's trying to tell, Emmy, my 3-year-old, this, and Emmy's like, why did they do that? And then she's like, I don't know. And she just kept asking, why? And my wife's like, you should ask God. And then my daughter's like, but God's not real. Right? And then she's like, yes, God's real. And then she's like, okay. And then I think Jenn continues to encourage her to ask God. And then later she's like, I asked Jesus, and Jesus says he doesn't know. Right? And so I thought that was so hilarious because what if Jesus was like, yeah, we just kind of drew it out of a hat? Can you imagine?
Flies through the short straw.
Yeah, so I thought it was so cool that, I think she maybe did try to ask Jesus, and maybe she got a response, and maybe Jesus really was like,
I don't know.
Yeah. It was by chance.
I love the faith of our children.
It's so good.
It is, man. It's something worth having.
Yeah. We're getting to a place with our girls right now or with Maggie, and talking about God and Jesus and trying to, like, Jesus is a baby, like, in her mind, like she
Baby Jesus,
right? And so there's that coming out of Christmas, and then her, like, well, he's not here with me right now. Like, I'm like, well, so, like, learning how to talk about this abstract thing and make it very practical has been very challenging for us. So if you have tips, let me know.
Talking about him living inside you, it's very disturbing for a child.
Yeah. Yeah, at bedtime, whenever they're already like terrified of
That's
like
right,
dark
that's
closet and stuff,
Yeah.
they're like, "What are you talking
What's
about?"
going on?
Yeah, that's been our evening conversations lately.
Yeah, I think this story was probably my first exposure to this idea of, like, oh my gosh, how am I going to tell my child that God is real?
Yeah.
So I'll if I come across anything, I'll definitely share it. But it's an interesting new development for sure.
Yeah. Keep things fun at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes things don't test our faiths like the questions our children ask.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, why do we invite this Brandon guy here today? What is he going to?
Good. Yeah. So you didn't get into it on your introduction part of the story, but I know that you guys have experienced some challenges as parents and growing your family with your youngest daughter, and just an illness, disease, and not just like, hey, strep throat or something. Like, it was pretty significant, pretty traumatic. And so I think that there's a reality where there are men who we know and love and care for, or who may be listening, who, like, there's a reality that life can be really, really hard. And things that we can't explain or understand can happen to us or to those we care about, including our, like, innocent, tiny little babies and children. And so would love for you to, if you're good with, like, getting a little vulnerable with us, like, share a little bit of the story that you and Jenn have gone through with Izzy and your family. And would love, with the hope that guys who are listening might be encouraged or hear something that makes them feel like they're not alone in their own journey, whether they've gone through that or going through something like that, or maybe someday, you know, as we all kind of prepare for that's reality, like, this can happen to any of us at any time, and probably will have some variation of an experience. So yeah, I don't know if that tees you up well enough, but would love for you to,
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yes, so my I have two daughters. One's a 3-year-old, Emmy, who we just heard a story about, and then the other's Izzy, and she's turning 2 in May. So we actually, I mentioned as in our transition here that we had our second Izzy, in New York, and I feel like whenever I talk to parents, like when I did like just a personal audit of people with multiple kids, I see like a kind of a theme where the first child tends to be the rule follower, the one that kind of listens well, and the second is a bit of the wild child, sort of. And my sister and I, kind of similar story. She's the younger, and I was always the rule follower. And so we kind of came into the second child experience expecting it to be difficult, but it was much more than I expected in a lot of different ways. And I think when she was first born and we were in New York, we were just kind of, it was a tough situation overall, because we had given up a safe career path to go to Maui. We got beat up and we're like, okay, let's go somewhere else. God's leading us. That's cool. And then we got to New York, and my in-laws were gracious enough. That's when my wife's from New York, actually. So we were actually staying with them for many of the months that we were there, and they live in a 600 square foot 1-bedroom apartment. So it was 5 of us. We took over their bedroom. Yeah, it was insane. I'm so grateful that they allowed this, but it was not without its troubles, for sure.
Gosh.
Yeah. So we had a pregnant wife. Yeah, we had I think she was 1 or 2 at the time, and it was difficult. Yeah. And so then we had, okay. And so my wife, okay, so check this out. She had she had to have a C-section for our first because of like a placenta thing. Everything was fine, but she wanted. She was really disappointed in the fact that she wasn't really able to breastfeed correctly. We didn't realize how difficult that would be, and so she like studied up and was trying to do this thing the right way. And so she decided to have Izzy unmedicated vaginal. It's called an unmedicated VBAC. Vaginal birth after C-section. So, I mean, it's just a big deal all around to like go through that experience for the first time, the second time, and to like really feel and go through all the pain and kind of be uncomfortable like in a living situation. And so it was just a rough, rocky start to the second child's life. And then sure enough, she comes and is, you know, the child that is a little wild. She cries. She cried a lot for many reasons. We could hardly tell why. In the beginning, we found out it was probably because she was hungry, because the breastfeeding thing didn't actually end up working out. And even all the way to when we moved to Austin, like we were just having to work so hard to get her to sleep. I mean, she needed to be bounced. And in the first years of her life, I was the only one that could do it. I on YouTube, I saw that video where the doctor's like holding the baby's neck and leaning her forward and like calming them down. And like that seemed to work, but I'd have to like deep knee bounce her and like sweat just to get her to go to sleep. And this just continued on. I mean, the positions changed, but we were like bitterly having to like tap out, you know, and have the other person take over so that we can calm this baby to sleep. And I think we moved to Austin when Izzy was maybe around 2 months, so pretty early on. And we got here, we're trying to move in and set up, and thankfully my mom came to help us out. But around that time, it was like right before Izzy's 3-month mark, my mom had just left. Like it was days after she left, and we were doing our thing. And I remember the night before everything happened, I was doing the bounce and getting really mad and sweaty. And then I remember in the midst of that, like holding her a certain way and her like not crying as hard. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Maybe she's got like a neck issue going on. And I felt it, but I kind of let that go. And then the next day, same stuff, same drill. And it was like midday. We put her down for her nap. And she never really slept all that well. She would go to sleep, but it would be very short, and we'd have to just rinse and repeat this whole scenario. And she slept for much longer than she normally does. And I had her like on her belly, because that just seemed to be what was comfortable for her. I had her in a blanket, and when we eventually she was sleeping so long, we decided to try to wake her, and she was unresponsive. I'm like, this is strange. And so we decided to check her temperature, and Jenn, being the more cautious one, was like, hey, let's take her to the hospital emergency room. I'm like, hey, let's hold on. Maybe this is nothing. And eventually it got to the point where like she continued to remain fairly unresponsive. And so I was like, okay, fine, let's drive to the, what do you call those? Not the emergency room.
Urgent care?
Yes, urgent care. And so we loaded up the car, and we're on our way there. And then Jenn pulls out, like she gets a sparkling water can just for her to drink. And as we're driving there, Izzy becomes like totally unresponsive. Like her eyes isn't even open. And then Jenn tries to put a cold can on her neck, and she didn't respond at all to a cold can on her neck. And we started to freak out. So we call the ambulance to take us, and they pick us up and take us to the hospital. And when we first get there, the doctor basically says, hey, it's probably just a fever. We gave her some Tylenol. Let's keep you guys overnight. And I'm annoyed. I'm like, oh God, if it's just a fever and all we need is Tylenol, why do we need to stay here? But I have to go get our stuff from home. So Emmy and I, we go back home to pack our things. And this is like probably 4 hours after we get there. I'm like on my way back, and then I get a call from the shift change doctor, basically. Or actually Jenn hands the phone off to her, and she's basically like, hey, we need to do a spinal tap. I'm like, what? What are you talking about, spinal tap? And so what ended up happening was the shift change doctor came on and does like, hey, can I see your baby? And then checks Izzy and then notices that when she lifts her head, Izzy starts to cry, right? And that is a sign for meningitis, right? And what she basically says is like, we need to do a spinal tap because there's two types of meningitis. It can be viral meningitis or bacterial meningitis. Viral is pretty common. And it pretty much, just, it's not like life-threatening. It goes away on its own. Bacterial is the one that we're worried about, which is why we have to do the spinal tap. And so we're like, okay, well, good. You know, it's most likely viral, apparently. That's like, and then bacterial is very rare. So we're like, okay, we're probably okay, you know? And so she does the spinal tap, and shortly after that, we find out it's bacterial. And she starts to go downhill really fast. I didn't expect to go this soon. Yeah. Yes, it's really, I've relived this moment a lot, but it's it's hitting different today. So we do the spinal tap, and I think there's some time, but before we find out what. Anyway, we find out it's bacterial. We get there, and they decided to check us in. I mean, we need to be checked into the ICU, and yeah. So she's just not. We're terrified, of course, and we're about to be transferred to the ICU. PICU. Yeah, PICU, that's right. And we have this moment, of course, where we're freaking out, and we're asking God, like, God, can you please, help us. And, you know, we're decided, oh, goodness. And when we're asking, we're praying to God, and I think what was beautiful about the moment there, before everything completely went off the rails, was she had been, you know, unresponsive most of this time. I mean, kind of responsive to nursing, and there was this moment when I was praying and asking God and just trying to reassure this baby, where Izzy and I, we connected, like she was almost like she was really registering that I was there. And this moment of peace before the storm. And it was really beautiful. And I'm still trying to really unpack the significance of that moment. And I think it was like, I think God was like reassuring me and us that, like, hey, I've got this, man. So I'm really grateful for that moment. But after that, like I said, it went downhill. We spent all night. She was battling this all night. She started to have seizures before she even got to PICU. God, it's so real. And you know, she's like convulsing. And we finally get to the PICU, and you know, they're of course giving her all the fluids and the medicine, to like the antibiotics to help her, and but it's like the meningitis was already gosh.
It's okay.
It's
Yeah, it's okay, Brandon.
yeah, I appreciate it. It's just so real to like see it again, you know,
Sure.
like in hindsight, being able to see even deeper beyond the story, where like, you know, her body is just like fighting this poison. And then it gets to the point where like, she's like, her heart rate is through the roof, and she's breathing really shallowly. And, I mean, she's fighting so hard that like the acid buildup is like taking her down further, you know, and like all the help that she's trying to give it to fight it is like, you know, coming against her and putting her life more in danger. And so, yeah, they have to intubate her to help take the pressure off her breathing, you know, and they have to, it just keeps, I mean, and they have to eventually put her into a medical coma and just to give her body a break so that the machines and the medicine can do its work. And it just gets to the point where, you know, she's got like seven tubes all coming out of her body, you know, and I'm watching these nurses try to stick this, you know, 2-month-old, you know, like, because it's hard to find a vein in adults sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And
Much less 7.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like everything out of an orifice. She's got like this all these wires stuck to her head, and it's awful. And it just, I guess, you know, we're still holding out hope that we caught it in time, because with bacterial meningitis, it really tears up the brain, real good. And so we go through this night where, you know, she's fighting for dear life, and her body's shunting. So like, it's like, it looks like she's got bruises all over her body because her body's prioritizing like sending the blood to her organs apparently. And yeah, we're holding out hope that like, hey, hopefully we caught it in time, that she you know, this is as bad as it gets. And a few days later, we end up having the MRI, and I'm kind of holding it together because it's like, okay, she made it through the night, and her vitals are looking better. And then Jenn was away at the time. I think she needed to grab some stuff from home, and the doctor comes in after the MRI, and I'm hoping that she's like bringing like, oh, thank God we caught it in time. But she actually ends up, she's looking real serious, and basically is like, hey, I'm really concerned about what I'm seeing, and basically tells me that we will have a special needs child, and that we don't know how bad it is with the brain, right? And that was like my breaking moment, right? Yeah, in that moment I was like, we have like this beautiful, healthy kid who I was mad at from time to time, but this future, this potential ahead of her, and it just felt like all that was stolen. And after the doctor left, I just locked myself in the bathroom, buried my head in the tiles, and just felt all that pain of loss that that she may, you know, not really have a good future ahead of her. And I think in those moments it was tough, but I guess I was thankful. I had a spiritual father, a really close friend, and some friends that like really just helped us through that time. I knew God in so many ways, like from that moment that Izzy looked at me and just went, like, even throughout all this, that like he was there. There was a piece that I couldn't explain throughout it all, and eventually, like it was a long process. Like for her to be extubated, and she as a young baby with meningitis, like you can't send someone home with you can't send a baby home with antibiotics. So we knew it was going to be like a 4-week thing, and so it was like a process of us just waiting and seeing. I mean that's still the case, but at every moment we're having to go through all these different trials. Like when she's extubated, I mean, like that breathing process, like we didn't know if she was going to breathe because of the brain damage, and thankfully she was breathing, but it was like it was like labored breathing. She was so mucusy and phlegmy, and she ended up getting a little bit of pneumonia, which is crazy being on antibiotics. And so it was like this difficult slog through, like, will she breathe, will she not breathe? And then the next thing was like, okay, will she nurse or will she not nurse? Because apparently that's much more complicated than we give it credit for. You know, will this, you know, is the damage done? Like, you know, is the antibiotics fully doing its job, or are there little pockets of pus that could be walled off infections which would need brain surgery? I mean, did she lose all of her hearing? I mean, these are all things that happen as a result of this. And it was actually ended up being 6 weeks of us kind of like on this roller coaster ride of like, you know, can she drink?
What's
you know,
next?
Yeah, exactly. What's next? And so, you know, throughout it all, yeah, God came through in a lot of ways. I mean, the friendships were one of them. They also, I think in that time, one of our friends actually from Maui, who, when we talked to them, like, they heard, and it's not like they didn't feel compassion, but like they didn't feel like this despair that we felt. And oddly, that was comforting, you know, through the pain of it all. I think what God was trying to show me is that he's just bigger than all these things. And every time that we were doing the what's next, the wait and see scenario, it was like a chance for us to either just melt down in despair or be like, okay, God, you know, you have promised that you have this. You've been encouraging us through all these little moments along the way, and so we're going to trust in you. And through that, we were able to have peace, but also I asked God, like, hey, can you make this place to be a sanctuary? Like, can you have this room be a sanctuary? And it ended up being that. Like, through the really tumultuous times, we were able to connect with the nurses and the doctors, and people loved coming there. Not necessarily for us, but because I think we were able to just kind of surrender into what God says is true. And I think that's, man, this is starting to get a little bit all over the place, but help me out here. Where should I go?
No,
Yeah.
we can just leave it there for a minute. Let us
Yeah.
process with you here.
Yeah.
We can
I think that's what I'm hoping for,
Yeah.
is a little bit of help processing.
No, that's great.
I mean, you know, I don't know your story at all. Like, this is the first time that I've had an opportunity to listen to you unpack the journey that you've experienced with Izzy. And there's just a couple of things that I'm thinking about. It's like, gosh, that must have been, I can't imagine how hard that was.
Yeah.
We've experienced having a son in the NICU, and, you know, as you were talking about what it looked like to have a child that has tubes coming out everywhere. And it reminded me of my moments watching my son in the NICU, and there is not a moment where I felt more helpless as a father.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing you can do. And, you know, this idea of what does it look like to trust God, but yet feel hopeless and despair. And I think there's this world where these things are all mixed together. I don't think you have to choose one or the other. Like, you can experience hopelessness, anger, all of the emotions while you're still trying to figure out what does it look like for me to trust God. Like, I don't think trust God automatically replaces all of those things. And I can't imagine, as you were walking through this as a father to a young, fragile, tiny little daughter, and watching her pain and suffering and not knowing what tomorrow brings. Like, I can't comprehend it, but I'm just grateful for your courage to share that story with us. And there's a part of me that's like, how is Izzy today? Because I don't know Izzy. I know nothing about you and Izzy. So how is Izzy? Can I ask that question? Is that okay for me to ask?
Yes. Thank you. Yes. I was trying to make my way there. I want to address both of those things, because Izzy, in the end, like, so what ended up happening with the wait and see is, you know, we even saw, like, the picture of her brain, and like a third of her brain was basically damaged and gone. And so it's, in so many ways, it was a miracle, because, you know, in being able to connect with these nurses and doctors and stuff, we got to hear, like, the behind the scenes of what can happen as people go through something like this, or what may have happened. And with Izzy, like was able to pick up the feeding. She was able to pick up the breathing. She was actually cooing, which is a really good sign of like her not having lost her hearing, because apparently babies don't coo if they don't hear anything. And some of the nurses, when they first saw Izzy's MRI scans, they were worried that she would be a total care baby. Like a vegetable is kind of how it's said. And I mean, we didn't even realize what that was. But apparently it's like it's 24/7, like a tube in the belly to feed the kid. You have to turn do everything clean. I mean, I can't imagine the people where that's their reality. But it could have been our reality, and it's not. I mean, she started to like do all the things that babies do despite what was on paper. And man, I mean, you know, that story about the shunting thing, I mean, one of the nurses saw a picture we took of Izzy without her diaper, and she was like, oh my gosh, this looks like what a dead person's body looks like. I mean, that's how bad it was in the throes of it. And so right now, like to see Izzy go through all that, and now she's actually like healthy. I mean, not 100% healthy. We still take her to therapy all the time, and really for her, it's a wait and see game in that, like, I don't know what all is affected or like what her end state is going to be, but she is developing. She's behind in terms of certain milestones and stuff. And physically speaking, most of the damage was on her right frontal lobe, and so the left side of the body has some motor control issues, right? So thankfully it still works, but her left hand doesn't work as well, and her right foot kind of doesn't. Yeah, it really mostly goes in one direction, and so we're going to physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, about like 4 times a week, and trying to do some stuff at home to like get that back. And it's important to do it now because of how plastic babies' brains are and stuff. But you know, she's happy. She is finally starting to say things. I mean, we're hoping that she understands well. We're hoping that she does have speech, and it's like we're starting to see little glimmers of it. We're hoping she walks soon because she's very heavy. Our arms are tired.
How old
But
is
she's
she?
eating. She's eating well.
Oh, and then she's eating as well. She's eating really well. She's turning 2 in May.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think when you look at her, like, for the most part, other than, okay, so one of the things that she did lose was her hearing in one ear. So she can still hear, and we found out that she lost her hearing in her right ear after we were discharged, which was actually really tough for my wife especially, because there's just some, like, with the brain, it's like, it's scary, but you don't really know what's up.
Yeah.
With hearing, and with the brain too, like with its plasticity, it's like, oh, hopefully, you know, like we can rewire it.
Sure.
You know, it can compensate. Yeah. But like when you lose hearing in one ear, that's permanent. And Jenn really struggled with the permanence of that. But we ended up, she ended up getting a cochlear implant fairly early on. That was also another scary thing because there was a chance that she could still lose hearing in the other ear, because apparently what happens with bacterial meningitis is that like it attacks the cochlear, and because of that attacking, the damage is that it can ossify and get all like stone, and so it just stops working like it should. But thankfully, I mean, we got the cochlear in the right ear, which seems to be working beautifully. Her left ear is fine. So other than like seeing glasses and which has nothing to do with the illness and but was helped discovered through the illness. Other than seeing glasses and a cochlear implant, it's kind of hard to tell that she, you know, is a special needs kid. And the fact that she can't walk or talk yet. I mean, that could probably be another one, but it's, you know, it takes a little moment to see that. But yeah, she's happy. She eats well. And
well, Shane, we got to go to their house. They invited us over for dinner a couple weeks ago, and Izzy's awesome. Like, and for the first time, well, we've hung out with y'all several times, but like she came right up to me and wanted me to hold her.
Oh yeah,
and she, guys, obsessed with my mustache. Like she,
as we all are.
She loved it, you know. And like I've been around Izzy where she was like having some hard moments, and where I've seen you bouncing her and like trying to get her to settle down, and you and Jenn both, and like, when we first met, I remember like, I could just see the stress of like that was weighing on you, and it was so cool for me to like enjoy dinner with y'all a couple of weeks ago, and to see the progress that she has made in the last 6 months, even of like, golly, I don't think she cried all night. Like, she maybe have fussed a little bit, like for attention, like any other child, like my children were doing, screaming, like, Dad, I want more ice cream or whatever it was, or like, I'm done with my dinner. But like, she, we had a blast, like just getting to like cherish some moments with her and with y'all. So I would say like I see a little girl who's making tremendous progress, and a family that's making tremendous progress, in spite of the significant challenges that you guys have experienced. Yeah. It's beautiful, really. You guys have a beautiful family.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you mentioned, this reminded me what you were mentioning before initially about the helplessness, right? And it's that, I think that's what I was wanting to get to, is that like through all of like this testimony, the healing stuff, it all kind of pointed to the fact that like it's not like a separate thing. I mean, there's something about that helplessness and not being able to control what Izzy's future is like, that in a weird way is like giving us hope, because one of the things that God's been doing in my life recently and reminding me of a lot, and this morning as I was thinking about Izzy's story as well, I was crying this morning as well, by the way, so this is not my first time today.
Glad we can create these opportunities for you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
It's Kyle's fault.
Thanks,
you can blame me.
Gosh.
I owe you.
I think in those moments of helplessness, and I don't know how to say this without sounding cliche, but one of the things God's been showing me a lot these days is just his Father's heart for all of us. And, because like with my daughter and feeling helpless and like remembering that I wanted to punt the kid for not sleeping well, and like before and after still going through like the hardships of bouncing her and sweating and like working hard just so that she can relax. I mean, all these things, and like, how much love and, pain I feel through all this thing. He's really been like through this showing me his heart for us in that, and that. And it's weird. It's hard to explain because it's a paradox, I guess. But
sure,
it's he, like, this pain. It really can feel like God. He doesn't love us, and he's abandoned us, right? And time and time again, he's showing us like, no, man, I'm not abandoning you, dude.
Yeah.
I feel this too, man. Every time I look at my kids, and then they're like getting hurt or choosing to hurt themselves, it's like, it hurts me. I don't want you to do it. But in the end, he shows me, it's like, but it's okay, because like I came and I overcame, and like this thing, it's not a big deal anymore. Like Jesus came to overcome this. Like there was a curse where despair was a reality for us.
Sure.
Like this hopelessness was a reality for us. But he's constantly reminding me, like, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be hopeless, because I paid the price that has to be paid. But I just loved you so much, man. So I think that's what floors me constantly through all this. And I mean, it's to the point where like he's starting to teach me that, like, this pain is something, and suffering can be something to be welcomed. Like God disciplines those he loves. Like it doesn't feel that way, but strangely, as this surrender process is happening, pain can be something that's like cool.
Yeah.
God, you got something cool here for me, and kind of run towards it instead of like trying to fight it or go around it. So I'm still very much in the process of learning what all that means, but like, man, the pain is real, but there's something that's more realer, through it all.
I think it's difficult for some of us that haven't walked a similar journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult to comprehend being there. Like seeing what you and your wife Jenn had to experience, but yet having this kind of faith that says, pain, cool, what do you got for me, God? And I think sometimes God shows up in the middle of our greatest challenges in a way that we've never experienced before.
Yeah.
And there's something about the way that you're describing the way you responded is like, I want your faith. Like, I want to experience that same level of faithfulness in my life. But yet sometimes it's like, but God, I don't want to experience sometimes the pain and suffering that
accompanies it.
That it comes with. And it's so hard. So I do have a question for you, Brendan, because I know that one thing I know is true for all of us as fathers in this room, listening, watching, that we will all go through situations, experiences where we have moments of helplessness, just like you've experienced. So what advice, or what would you say to a father who may today, tomorrow, yesterday experience those moments of helplessness, similar to what you experienced? What would you say to a father?
Oh boy, I have a hard time with advice because I tend to take it on as like a burden. I don't know if you've ever felt this, but like I'm always like looking for tools and tips and hopes that I avoid these situations.
Hacks, trying to...
Yeah, hacks, exactly. And so I don't want this to ever come off as like, that. Because, you're just bringing up, like, the avoidance of this is usually unavoidable.
Yeah.
So I think more than like any advice, it's just I'm hoping that whatever I've shared is just a reminder that we have a Father who understands, he's... described as a man of sorrows who's well acquainted with grief.
Yes.
And even though it feels like you're alone going through this stuff, you're not.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
And so I hope that you hear the hope in my voice as you're going through this, because there was not a moment when I felt alone, which is amazing. And I think I can see a moment where I could definitely see, because I could definitely see how you could feel that way, but I just want to reiterate that that's not the truth, and and we have a Father who can identify.
Well, and it sounds like, Brandon, that you've got other people in your life too, who reminded you of that truth throughout this experience, as well, and that's something I think that we. If you guys listen to this with any consistency, hopefully that's a theme that guys hear, is that like, what you said, like, yes, we do have a Heavenly Father who is well acquainted with what we endure and are presented with in life, but also that we need other men in our lives, other people in our lives who can remind us of these truths consistently and walk with us, and to hear a friend's story in a way that reminds me of what's true, of God's love for me, but also of like, there may be moments or seasons, extended seasons, where like that can be a really, really hard truth to hold on to or cling to, and I need people who can remind me of that. Yeah. And so that's really our whole goal with this entire experiment here, is to create opportunities for men to hear these stories and and then an invitation to rub shoulders with us, because we can't do it by ourselves. And there is a spiritual like connection with God in that, but also I think a spiritual connection with other men too. And that's not a natural thing. I think there's so many men who there's a narrative of masculinity, I think, that says that like we have to do it on our own. We have to conquer, we have to prove, we have to achieve, we have to perform, we have to. I don't know if you ever felt like you had to say, like, present a facade to the doctors or nurses or to your wife or extended family that like, hey, everything's okay. But if there's a narrative, I think, in culture that says, yeah, we have to do that. And behind all of that, I think there's a soul that needs to be loved and cared for and seen and encouraged. And I think there's a place for us to create that for other men. And
Sure.
you know, that's our goal, is we want to invite people into that, other men into that. And
I think, and I think too, when we're going through these moments of helplessness, when we have a lot of raw emotions, and that may include anger, fear, disappointment, despair, that we don't have to clean ourselves up for our Heavenly Father. Like I love the line that says, "Bring what you've got." If you've got anger, bring it. If you've got sadness, bring it. Like our Heavenly Father wants us to lean on Him. I have a friend. He's my age. He recently tragically lost his son in an accident, and I've been. We don't live close to him, but I've been watching him walk through this journey. And he said something yesterday. He was talking about how he gets tired of people asking him how he's doing, because he's like, they know how I'm doing.
it's horrible.
I mean, he's like, he said, I'm shitty. Like, really, I am. And I'm tired of people asking me, how am I doing? Like, give me a hug. You don't have to ask me, hug me. But he said 3 things that I thought were profound. He said, when it comes to my Heavenly Father, I'm crying, I'm cursing, and I'm clinging. And I thought that was profound, because he's like, I know my Heavenly Father can take it all. Yeah. If I'm angry at Him, I think about just some of the Psalms that I've read. Like David just unloads his heart, and God's saying, I can take it.
Bring it.
Yeah.
And I know myself that I can't empathize with you, Brandon, because I haven't experienced what you've experienced. But what I do know is true is I know my Heavenly Father can. Yeah. And I know for you, or for men that are listening in, I want them to believe in a God that can empathize with them. And they don't have to pretend, act, try to look fine. Cry, curse, and cling to your Heavenly Father, because you can experience hopelessness in moments of utter helplessness.
Yeah. That's so true. That rings really true.
So as I was like listening to your story and listening to or paying attention to my friend's journey, what advice do you have for us as fathers or men who have other men in our lives who are walking through similar things? Like I think we all have like experienced watching somebody go through something, and we're like, I love my friend so much that I want to help, but I don't necessarily know what help looks like. Yeah. So in the situation that you were in, what does it look like for friends, or what advice do you have for us to come alongside men who are going through something similar that you went through?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. I think it's very much along the lines of like, don't ask me how I'm doing, give me a hug. The hardest thing that we had that we experienced with the people, like with the intention of everyone wanting to help, was the questions like, how can I help you? How are you? Like in the moments, especially when you're like, when we were going through all this and there was so much on our minds, it was just the swooping in and the acts of service or physical affection and just doing that was really helpful to us. So, for example, our cousin, Jen's cousin, set up a meal train. I was like, hey, I'm doing this. And
she didn't ask. She
didn't ask. She did. Yeah, I'm doing this. Give me all your information. And basically, even in the document, she's like, don't ask them what they want. Everyone's going to sign up here, and you'll get to see what people are ordering. So you decide, and you just send it to them, right? And so it was like they were looking, okay, well, they had Mexican this night, so I should do Italian this night. And so it was like this train of like, we just never had to worry about us figuring out what was for dinner. And usually there was a lot left over for breakfast and lunch. And sadly, not everything could be eaten either. So, I mean, which was amazing, right? This amazing abundance in terms of like just acts of service there. Or like you know, like even well-intentioned and really nice, I know where it's coming from. It's great. Like, hey, you know, let me know if there's anything I can do for you, right? Like I think it's like they're trying to show that you care, but I think in those moments, like,
did you feel?
We also had friends that would just like, even to now, like we have a monthly reoccurring offering since then of a friend who just was like, hey, you know, this is part of what God led me to do, and so I'm sending you money, and like there's no requirement for thanks or, you know, I mean, I feel love, right? And every once and again, I reach out to him, I'm like, thank you so much. This really means a lot that we're still getting support from you, you know.
And these folks didn't ask. They're like, this
They
is
just
what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, when people say, let me know what I can do, does that feel like burdensome on you?
Totally.
Like now I have to meet your need
Yes.
to help me.
yes, that's exactly how it feels.
And I think sometimes
Yeah.
I'm trying to put myself in your shoes with some of the stories I've experienced with my own children. There are moments that you can't even process that question.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even want to give my mental capacity to answering that question. Like, what kind of food do you want? It's like, don't make me answer
don't
that
wanna
question
eat
because
right
I didn't
now.
want to think about it.
Yeah.
Just give me something.
Yeah.
Because there's too many other things going on in my mind to even worry about that question.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, it's such a burden in those moments when it's like, will my baby live or not? And then it's like, you know, they're well-intentioned, like, how are you? It's like, oh, boy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not that we didn't want to honor that. We did for sure. But, man, it is so great when somebody just swoops in. It's like, hey, I'm going to take your kid. You know, I'm going to take your kid once a week. In fact, there was a family that did that for us.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to take your kid once a week so you can focus on Izzy. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Really? So I wish I was packaged better, but I think just do it maybe is the way to sum it up.
We don't want packaged answers.
Okay,
We want
good.
Authentic, real answers. So thank you for bringing those.
Yeah, and kind of, as we kind of put a bow on this whole thing, you know, but something that Shane has done for me, Brandon, is introduced me to a reality where, you know, you talked about, like, we talked pretty openly, candidly about, like, bring, what did you say, the cursing, the
Cry, curse, and cling.
cry, curse, and cling, you know, to God. But something Shane's helped me with over the last couple of years is, like, how do we, like, finding the men or people in your life who will do a decent job at mirroring that same thing for me, of like, hey, you can say whatever it is you need to say, or be as raw or vulnerable, angry that you can, and I'm not going to flinch. You know, like, you say that language all the time. Like, how do we become the men who aren't going to flinch? You can literally say or do anything right now. I'm not going to flinch. I'm just going to take it. Or I'm just going to receive it. And then we'll figure it out. We'll unpack it. We'll go from there. But that level of empathy that's like zero judgment, that invites us to drop a mask, to drop the persona or all of the, like, to just literally be, like, open and say or be whoever I need to be. So I say that to just reiterate that, to say, like, you know, my encouragement to men out there who are listening, or to, like, is like, we've got to find guys to run with and to walk with in our lives, with our families, who will allow us to just be Brandon, or just to be Shane or Kyle, and not flinch. And, you know, I feel like, you know, this has been such a fun, like, I say fun. This has been such a valuable experience, I think, for us, Brandon, and for, I think, our audience who are listening, because it's definitely a pattern disrupt to some of the content that we've been working on, and by introducing some stuff that hopefully guys are, like, really, really relating to, or have, whether anecdotally experienced through relationships or family, or are experiencing. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much for your vulnerability. And I know that this is not always easy to talk about. I can see that. But your choice to go there and to drop a mask and to invite in a bunch of strangers through a camera, you know, and online, to to see a piece of who you are, I think is a real testimony to your character and to the work God has done in your life and to your family and to your strength and your courage. I just feel like we're all very blessed because of you today. I'm excited and hopeful for the guys who get to experience and taste a bit of this conversation and to see what happens, like to see what gets spurred on in their life. And unfortunately, we may never know those stories. That's part of the thing about a podcast or a video. But I think you've done a great job honoring Izzy and your family and the journey you've been on, in the last couple of years. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your emotions with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can't imagine how difficult that journey was for you.
Oh, it's not easy even looking back,
Sure.
But I loved getting to experience this with you guys again, even though crying on camera is probably not the most.
Shane does it all the time.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Great. I'm in good company.
Yeah. Now we do at the end of our podcast, we like to hey, what was one thing that either stood out to you or a takeaway?
Yep.
Kyle, I don't know if there's anything that you took away from this podcast.
Well, something I'm chewing on, and I want to talk to you some more, but is like kind of the chicken before the egg conversation. Like the way that you've endured this whole experience and the way that your faith and that faith journey through it as well. Like obviously you're learning and growing as a father and as a man throughout the whole thing. What I'm taking away though, Brandon, is like you may not have felt prepared for this whole experience. And there's like so much learning and growth. And I'm sure that has just compounded over the long days or hours, months, years now. In whatever way, like I'm just walking away with but you were prepared for it in ways that I question, am I prepared for today? And that just speaks volume, I think, again, to your character and who you are and your faith and who you and Jenn choose to be. And that's inspirational today, and so I don't know what's coming next for our family or what's next in my life or journey, but just the idea of what am I prepared for,
Roses.
And what'd you say?
Roses.
Golly. So, I'm leaving with that word preparation. What am I preparing for? So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Brandon, anything takeaway for you?
Takeaway for me.
Never say yes to Kyle again.
Yeah. No,
whatever. I'm having you back. We're going to get you back for another round.
Oh my God. Well, I was going to say my takeaway is, you're saying you hope that this kind of environment is created, but I felt like just being able to go through it and relive it again in this way. I mean, it's always looping in my head at some basic level, but to be able to share it with you men here and whoever might be listening, wow, that was really good.
Yeah.
I'm just so thankful that I'm just so hopeful.
Yeah.
Bring it on, world. You ain't got nothing against against my father, that kind of thing. So I'm just encouraged. That's really the main takeaway here. Cool. So I just want to, I guess, encourage you that it is happening, at least for me.
Yeah.
I think I'm guessing not just for me. So
that's awesome. Thank you.
That's good.
Shane.
I'm trying to figure out how to articulate it well. There's that moment where you were talking about how you as a father were feeling about your daughter and how it was a reflection of how our Heavenly Father feels about us. Like you were giving us a glimpse of how our Heavenly Father emotionally feels about us. It was profound for me. And I was like, I want that. I want your perspective in those moments of helplessness to see God the way that you saw God in that moment, God the Father. And so all that to say is I just want to be like you when I grow up. I think it's a simple way of saying that. And not that I look forward to these difficult seasons because we know they're coming with our children. This is just the life that we live. But I think that you've helped me prepare for it, Brandon. So thank you for sharing your story and your journey with us.
Thanks, Shane.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Well, Kyle, another episode.
Another one down. Number 12. We're done. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we
It's been
figured out
good.
how to close these things off well.
Not really.
No, we just kind of like, there
That's
it is.
Jeremy's job.
Jeremy's job. Jeremy, drop the magic at the end.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hey, dads, thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Kyle and I are honored to have you, and we hope you took something away from the episode. Wherever you are, we appreciate your support. So go ahead, hit that like button, the subscribe button, or whatever button is in front of you with the technology you're using. And if you wouldn't mind to let us know that you're actually tuning into this podcast, we would love it if you would text the word Upshot to 97000. That won't just let us know that you're listening, but it's also a way that you can subscribe to any updates or resources that we will have coming down the pipeline in the future. Again, guys, thanks for tuning in. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we can't wait to see you next time.